Should you summon Ino? I feel like I have to preface this video by saying I love Ino. Just look at this cool animation I made back of him when he, spoiler alert, threw a dragon at Sukuna. Now, just like I said about the two Todos in my last video, it's always a shame when you have a character that you like in JJK being done a little bit dirty in this game. Now, I will say this, he's not terrible, don't get me wrong, just like Blue Todo in my opinion. He's a really cool unit who's not bad. He's got really cool animations and pretty cool mechanics. However, there are just too many little things that this Ino lacks to be worth summoning for. I mean, I saved up to pity him just in case, which was, you know, the right option because look at these pity points, but I did so just because I am a huge fan of the character. As I say, I refer you to this old animation I made, as well as the video where I rank my favourite characters. But Takuma Ino is a character I very much enjoy. I really enjoy Ino. Link on screen if you want to hear me yap for 2 hours. But yeah, this character isn't exactly meta, despite how cool he is. So let's go through his kit to discuss why he isn't as good in this game as I wanted him to be. Unlike a lot of the other units that I go through, I'm not going to go through their kit in like standard order, 1, 2, 3, 4, ult, etc. With Ino, you kind of have to explain his gimmick first for the rest of his skills to make sense, right? So his main shtick is his skill 3, and what his skill 3 enables is that it allows for double actions, right? Whenever he is in, you know, Spirit Turtle, or I think it's Raiki, number 1 Kaichi, number 2 Raiki, number 3 Kirin, and number 4 Ryu. I made a video about his curse technique a while ago, feel free to watch that. But when you activate his skill 3, it is pretty cost effective. However, it lasts for 4 turns and it allows you to do double actions. When you activate it, yes, it decreases the damage you deal and it decreases your ult gauge, right? On the surface, that sounds like a huge downside, right? But it's not, because you are still getting 2 turns and 20% is like really minor, because think about it, you are still doing 2 actions per turn, so minus 20% isn't that big a deal, right? That's really not that huge. It goes on a cooldown the first time you use it. If you use it again on the 4th and final turn that it's active, it give that 30% damage back, so you're back to neutral damage, so there's no debuff active now, and it also gives you cursed energy efficiency, and I think it reduces 10 off of your skill 2, which is a pretty good attack skill. But with that being said, let's go into the rest of his kit and explain how it works alongside his skill 3 and this Raiki state, because saying Spirit Turtle is a mouthful, so we'll call it Raiki because that's what it's called. Also, before anything, may as well go through his auto skill since I've just mentioned it here. Whenever he does his first skill, gets 10 extra cursed energy and increases a Jujutsu stat, which is pretty good. But let's get into the rest of Ino's kit specifically. His skill 1, obviously this is terrible. This is like, this is Red Todo levels of skill 1. However, you're never going to use that. It literally never. You're going to use his skill 3 and then immediately get the better version of skill 1, which literally triples it and buffs his damage dealt. So does good damage and it buffs himself, and the crit rate's not terrible. Crit damage, not ideal, but that's pretty strong. That's pretty good. I think that's a pretty competent skill 1. And also, because of it, you might notice he does taijutsu damage for his skill 1, jujutsu damage for his skill 2 and his ult. We'll get into where that's important later, but for now just keep that in the back of your head. His skill 2, as I say, without Reiki active, 40% jujutsu stat buff, 450. Well, that is decent, but it's still, you know, not perfect. In Turtle State, you just get an extra double buff, right? And don't forget, you could use this twice in a single turn. So 60% damage dealt. Boom, it stacks, right? That's great. That's genuinely really good. Like, yet again, there's no downside. You can get decent damage with this because of the buff that it provides, whilst also in Reiki. His ult, upon first inspection, you're looking at it and you're thinking 900% damage, that's pretty bad. I won't lie, it's not ideal, right? It's not the best. However, I will say this, don't forget you get this huge buff to your Jujutsu stat, which is pretty good. So it's not as terrible as it looks. It's not great, I won't lie, it is not the best ult by a large margin, but it's not terrible, right? Because you are getting huge buffs and you'll be buffing yourself twice before you use it with his skill 2. You know, you'll use Reiki twice, so these will only cost 10 a piece, and then you'll get the 60% buff, and then you'll use it again, the sequential 10. Since you have double actions, so use Kaichi twice, his skill 2. Then, you know, next turn, since you still have double action active, use Kaichi again, and then use his ultimate Kaichi. It is kind of annoying, but I'll get into why I don't like his ult from like a lore perspective later, but not right now. His combo, Cursed Energy, which isn't terrible because, granted, he won't be struggling with Cursed Energy too much because you will be using his skill 1 a lot, you know, because why not? And when you do have Cursed Energy, well, more of it, you'll be using his skill 2 a bunch, because you are getting 15 Cursed Energy a turn, and also, when he receives an attack, he gets another 5 Cursed Energy. And I didn't say this earlier, when he has Reiki active, he has a 20% chance to dodge, which isn't terrible. That adds a little bit of survivability, which isn't bad. Not great, everyone would prefer, like, maybe a damage reduction, because it's more reliable, or just more of a flat buff, but hey, it's something, right? It's not bad. Now, because a good chunk of his damage will come from his skill 1, because when Raiki is active, you're going to be using his skill 1 a bunch to get a good chunk of damage in at the start until you build enough cursed energy and ult gauge to do Kaichi, then his ult, right? It makes sense. However, as a result of this, it's another unit that, like Todo, like Blue Nanami, you know, where you can't use Geto alongside them because it's not optimal, right? It's another one of those units where it's like, okay, just use Blue Inumaki instead, which isn't a bad thing, but it just means you can't use Geto, who is a really good unit in my opinion. You know, he's a really good supporter, but you just can't use him because a lot of the damage at the start, you'll just be missing out. It's very suboptimal, right? To sound pretentious, right? It's not great, but you can still use Blue Maki, Blue Momo, Yaga, Domain Gojo, you know, everyone else on the rest of the team, standard. You don't need to overthink everything else because, you know, that the rest of the team is fine. Just try not to use Geto if you have other supporters that could fill the space on blue. One kind of annoying thing about him specifically, if we go all the way to the bottom here, you might notice when showing his memories, it's stuff that buffs both physical and Jujutsu, as well as non-standard, because that's good on everyone who's a DPS, right? Like, as you can probably tell, he only buffs himself. This dude is a DPS, of course, right? But the memory that he comes with is just a memory made specifically for him. No, nothing else. Because the whole gimmick of this memory is that it will, when someone's in an additional state, like an additional action state, they get constant, like, damage up active. These two are, like, the only dudes who get double actions. So it's like, okay, you can use it on one of these two, but at the same time, it buffs Jujutsu, and Zonji doesn't do Jujutsu damage, so it's clearly not made for him. It is just a memory strictly made for Ino. I hate it when they do that, then when they make a memory incredibly specific for the unit. Granted, I pulled like 2 or 3 of the memory because my RNG is terrible and I can never pull the units I want, but hey, what can you do? TLDR, should you summon for this Ino? In my opinion, no. He is one of those units like Blue Todo, like Blue Nanami, like Red Todo, like Yellow Mekamaru, where they are fun units, but they are far, far, far from meta. Because of him debuffing himself with his Raiki, which he's constantly in, with him, you know, the lower ult damage, which, yes, as I said, it's not terrible because of this, but it's still overall a relatively low percentage. He can struggle with cursed energy sometimes because a lot of your damage will also come from his skill too, which, you know, can be cost energy heavy sometimes. He does have too many negatives to be mega, like, high tier. He does have survivability, a little bit more so because of his evasion, right? That's not terrible, but ideally, if it was like the show or something like that, he should have gotten like damage reduction or something instead of, you know, evasion. But whatever. As I say though, of course, he's going to be really fun. He's rather unique. He's one of 2 units who have double actions, you know, alongside Zonji. But Zonji just does so much more damage. It's you know, it's not even close. Like, think about who on blue does similar stuff. Who else does Jujutsu damage on blue? Sukuna, Jogo, Gojo, Geto, Inumaki, right? There's too many characters on blue who can do what he wants to do better, which is a shame in my opinion. Right, so I wouldn't summon for him because he kind of has no place in the meta. If you do pull him, only pull him because you're a huge fan of the character like me. That's the only reason I could say for summon for him, right? Because think about who's coming next to global, right? We have the new Toji coming, we have Choso, we have the new Jogo and Megumi have come out recently on JP. There's like a bunch of new units coming out really soon that you should save up cubes for. And even if you don't want to, even if, say for example, right now, as of like this second, you're missing a Jujutsu damage blue type unit, right? If you don't have blue Gojo for some reason, if you don't have blue Jogo, even though he's free to play, the Sukuna banner is still active right now for like a couple more days. I wouldn't even suggest going on that because he'll probably come back consistently, the same way Red Domain Gojo does. Like, they get floated around a lot because they're such meta units. They kind of have to keep them in rotation every month or two. So Sukuna will come back, but if you are really, really struggling and you don't have a really good Jujutsu DPS, Sukuna's banner is still active. Now for this little tidbit about the unit that annoys me. So in regards to his kit, in regards to anyone's kit in Phantom Parade, they have 4 moves, right? 3 active skills and 1 ult, right? Ino's curse technique is 4 summons. Kaichi, Raiki, Kirin, and Ryu, right? So I would have preferred it if each one of his auspicious beasts would have been a skill, but because it's, you know, Phantom Parade's obviously anime only, we're not allowed that, but I just wanted to see a cool Ryu ult. It's just that Toji kind of stopped that from happening, which is such a shame, but that's just me. That's just like a little tidbit. Obviously they weren't going to do it, but I really wanted them to do it, but whatever. You know, it's like an anime only gacha game, that's fine, but it would have been so cool if they had a Ryu ult, but whatever. Overall, as I said though, the memory that he comes with on the banner itself is just for him, so there's no point summoning for the memory or anything like that. Character himself of Ino, despite how fun, he is underwhelming. He's not great. There's no reason to summon for him. The only reason you summon for him, as I said, is if you're a fan like me or you're insane. Like, if you just are an oil baron and you just have money to burn, right? If you just have stones to throw away, sure, summon for him. But beyond that, don't. Save up for Choso. Right, that's all I'm going to say. Save up for Choso, because he is inarguably kind of like top 5 units from what I've heard from other people who play the game prolifically, right? Choso is like tops. He is up there, right? Let's even check the wiki. As I've said many a time before, people say it's highly inaccurate, but even still, where is he? 3rd for damage, 4th for support. Do you know how good you have to be at the top of both? Triple S in both? I'm just saying, save for Choso, because his banner, I assume, will be relatively soon. Maybe Naobito if they mess up the order like they did with Ino if they skip it for whatever reason. But like he's probably going to be the next unit to come to global, probably. Save for him. Save up for Choso. That's my thoughts. Should you summon Ino? No, you shouldn't. Save your stones. As soon as my duels, over to the next one. Peace.